Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this Tuesday morning. And we're delighted to have Xero with us. Obviously, ICB, we're delighted to be partnered up with Xero to deliver an MTD campaign. We know how important it is to make sure bookkeepers are prepared in the lead up, essentially from now all the way through to April 2026 and beyond. So we're really excited to have Jess here today, who's going to be talking you through the latest developments and also how Xero can help you. While we're just waiting for everyone to join, I'll just quickly run through the housekeeping. So we are recording this session today, so you will receive a copy of this recording. If you do have any questions, please just make sure you use the Q&A. It's the easiest way for us to keep track of any questions that are coming in. And I know Jess is going to be on it with going through them and making sure she answers everything. And if you've not yet booked your tickets to the Bookkeepers Summit, they are on sale now at thebookkeepersummit.com. We're running early bird pricing until July, so make sure you book now. If you're an ICB member, you get further pricing discounts compared to the public price. So please make sure you book, and if you have any questions, reach out to the ICB team. You know we love to chat to you. So I think the attendees are starting to slow down. I think most people are here now. So I think with that, I'm going to hand over to Jess. If you could just introduce yourself, and thank you so much for hosting this session today.
Fabulous. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Jess and I'm part of the education team here at Xero. And I have the absolute pleasure in traveling up and down the country, even globally, speaking with accountants and bookkeepers, as well as small business owners, all about Xero and how to use the product and ultimately what our mission is, how we're here to support partners and support bookkeepers like yourselves with the latest legislative changes such as MTD or making tax digital, something which is, I think, the hottest topic right now for everyone in our industry. So it's an absolute pleasure being here today, and we've got quite a lot to get through. So I'm going to jump straight in. I am going to turn my camera off though, if you don't mind, just because I will be looking at my second screen and it might not be the best experience. So I'm going to turn my camera off, but I will pop it back on at the end of the session. So I just thought it'd be nice for you all to see that I am here and I am a real person, because I have been asked that before on webinars previously. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you can all see the opening slide. Now, as Jasmine mentioned, if you have any questions as we're going throughout the session, do send them over in the Q&A and I'll look to get those answered, maybe as we're going throughout the session, or I might choose to leave some towards the end. If we don't get around to answering all of your questions today, please do not panic. You can, of course, send them through in the Q&A, and what I'll do is I'll reach out to ICB and any questions that were unanswered, I'll look at providing an answer after the session concludes. But that's enough about me and enough about sort of what we're going to be looking at. We're going to jump straight in now because, as I said, we have a jam-packed agenda. So buckle up. I hope you're ready. We've got a lot to cover. So as I mentioned, we've got a lot that we're looking at today, and we're going to be starting off by covering off what is MTD for income tax, what does that mean for bookkeepers like yourselves and accountants. What does that look like for our industry? What does that look like for small business owners, our clients who are going to be impacted by MTD for income tax? We're then, of course, going to be focusing on our sneak peek of our solution, which I'm sure is the reason why most of you are here today. And then we're going to be focusing on how you can best prepare within your practice, or how you can best prepare your clients. Some of you might have a large client portfolio, others may be working with a couple of clients, maybe you only have a couple of clients who will be impacted by this first wave of MTD. Either way, it doesn't matter. What you will find is we have lots of really useful resources and tools that can help you prepare, and I'll be sharing some resources with you at the end of the session, which leads me nicely onto what your next steps will be after today. So then let's firstly discuss what MTD is, what is Making Tax Digital, how it came about, and how it led us to where we are today. Now, in 2015, the UK government announced their long-term plan to revolutionise the UK tax system. They pledged significant investment to transform HMRC into one of the most digitally advanced tax administrations in the world. Their aim was to transform the UK's tax system so it was more effective, more efficient, and simpler for taxpayers to use. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't quite believe that this year marks 10 years since Making Tax Digital was first announced. 10 years. Honestly, when I realised that it was their 10th year birthday this year, my mind was blown. I couldn't quite believe how much time it has been since we first heard about MTD, and I started having those worries and those anxieties around how I was going to manage my VAT clients. And of course, we're now here for pretty much round two, but in this time focusing on income tax. Now, I do want to also just quickly reference the tax gap report, or measuring the tax gap. And just a quick question to you all. I'm always curious to know. Feel free to raise your hand or let me know in the Q&A. Who here has a look at the tax gap report that HMRC publish every year? We've all gone a little bit quiet, so I take that as not many at all. Or it's just a Tuesday morning, it's a little bit early in the day for us all to be to be engaging. But the reason why I ask that is because I personally find the tax gap report fascinating. I always like to see how much tax should have been paid versus what has been paid, and it almost just highlights the issue and the reason why Making Tax Digital first came about. Now, at the moment, as it stands right now, currently we only have the tax gap report from 22-23 tax year. I was at HMRC's offices only a couple of weeks ago, and the first question I asked them was, when's the latest tax gap report coming out for 23-24? And it should be released hopefully within the coming weeks, which is exciting. So it'd be really nice to know if that tax gap has reduced. But the reason I'm calling out the tax gap is just to add a bit of emphasis onto why Making Tax Digital was first created and was born and brought into our industry by HMRC. And that is because the VAT gap shows a downward trend, falling from 13.7% to 4.9% between the tax years of 05-06 and 22-23. So this just means that the VAT tax gap has reduced significantly due to Making Tax Digital, which in turn we expect to see with Making Tax Digital for income tax, or MTD for income tax. So it does just go to show that HMRC's legislative changes like MTD has helped to close the gap, and we expect this for income tax but also for corporation tax in the future as well. Now, Les has asked a great question. How do HMRC know what the tax gap is? By definition, it's an unknown figure. And that is a great question, Les, and one that I don't have the answer for, I'm afraid. That would definitely be a question for HMRC, but I am actually going to their offices again in a couple of months' time. So I will make a note and I will ask that question, because it is something that I have wondered. I've always thought, how have they, come up with this, or where does that figure come from? But ultimately what that tax gap looks at is how much money they expect to be paid versus what has been paid. But what's really interesting to note here is that the gap is closing. So it just goes to show that MTD has significantly helped that and almost backed up the reason why MTD was first created. Now, speaking of MTD, and we've already established that it's been 10 years, can't quite believe it, since it was first announced. So we're just going to quickly refresh ourselves on the timeline. What have we been through? What have we experienced over the past 10 years? Well, back in 2015, HMRC announced MTD and their vision to transform the tax system in the UK. April 2019 saw the first introduction of MTD for VAT, which affected 1.2 million businesses whose turnover was over the VAT threshold of 85,000 at that point in time. The next phase of MTD came in April 2022, which meant that all VAT registered businesses were then required to follow the MTD for VAT rules, even if their turnover was below the VAT threshold. So with MTD for VAT now complete, the next tax to go digital is, of course, income tax. And despite the delays along the way, HMRC have confirmed the following dates, and these are correct and current as of now. Now, MTD for income tax will be introduced in 3 waves, and around 2.7 million taxpayers will be affected in total. So that is a lot of taxpayers who will be impacted over the next few years. So we're going to be starting with wave 1, which is of course April next year, which will see 796,000 sole traders and landlords who need to adopt MTD for income tax, and that's because they're businesses earning over the qualifying income of 50,000. We then have wave 2 starting in April 2027, which will see a further 1.014 million sole traders and landlords adopt MTD for income tax, and their businesses with qualifying income over 30,000. And then wave 3, which HMRC have recently announced in their spring budget in March of this year, that sole traders and landlords with qualifying income over 20,000 will then be pulled in to wave 3, taking place in April 2028, which is again equivalent of 944,000 taxpayers that then need to also comply. Now, MTD for corporation tax is coming, but the question is when. Now, HMRC are yet to announce a timeline for MTD for corporation tax, but we will, of course, share more on this when we know more and, of course, when we can. But the purpose of today is we're focusing on MTD for income tax. A lot of these legislative changes, VAT and income tax, will impact a lot of your client base, and I'm sure many of you have all of your clients who will be impacted. Some of you, as I mentioned before, might only have 1 or 2. Either way, we will all be impacted to some degree by MTD for income tax. So we've looked at the timeline, but what exactly is changing? Well, I just want to say that for those of you who experienced MTD for VAT and worked with businesses who were VAT registered, what you will find is that actually the principles of MTD haven't changed. What I mean by that is the principles of change that we had for MTD for VAT is the same for income tax. However, the target market, being taxpayers, sole traders and landlords, they are different. So what we're finding here is that MTD for income tax will require eligible businesses and landlords to keep digital records and submit quarterly updates to HMRC using MTD compatible software. So the 3 main areas to consider are, firstly, digital record keeping. Now, we've already experienced changes to record keeping with MTD for VAT, as I've already mentioned, so this really shouldn't feel too unfamiliar to you. However, many of the sole traders and individuals that we work with who are required to follow MTD for income tax rules won't be VAT registered, meaning that these requirements are new to them. Now, for those clients who maybe are handwriting their transactions down in a red leather book or providing you with a shoebox full of records, or they have them stacked up on a desk for you when you go to their premises, I would probably suggest working a bit closer with those clients, especially to give them an extra leg up. Of course, the clients who are already keeping digital records, they're well versed in the world of digital record keeping, so they'll need less assistance from you. But those who aren't currently using those tools, we want to be spending a little bit more time with them. Another principle of change is increased reporting requirements. Now, this is a big one for both you and your clients. You will need to submit quarterly updates. Now, they're cumulative updates, and I'll talk a little bit more on those shortly. And that's where we'll be capturing that year-to-date income and expenditure. And there will also be an annual final declaration, which needs to be sent as well. And whilst this is slightly more work, it will help your clients have better visibility of their upcoming tax bills, which can't be a bad thing. I wished it was something that I could showcase to my clients was their expected tax bill to be paid. But instead, it tended to be something that I could only provide at the year end. But now, by providing quarterly updates to HMRC, we're going to be receiving a tax estimate based off of those figures that have been filed. So it will help our clients maybe put some money aside throughout the year so that that tax bill isn't quite as big of a shock. But it also, in turn, for us as bookkeepers, enables us to really help our clients thrive by giving them a better understanding of how their self-employed businesses are performing and how profitable their rental properties are as well. So for me, I think the increase in frequency of reporting isn't a bad thing at all. If anything, I actually think it's really going to help those 2.7 million taxpayers who are going to be impacted over the next 3 years. And then lastly, we have MTD compatible software. So of course, we need to make sure that we are using MTD compatible software to manage, track and send submissions over to HMRC, software such as Xero. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit more on those quarters then, because there's a little bit of confusion around the industry on these. Now, what you will find is it will result in you and your clients shifting from one yearly submission, and that might not be something that you do. That might be something that the accountant does or someone within the business does themselves. But what you will find is we'll be shifting from one yearly submission in January to a minimum of 4 quarterly cumulative updates throughout the year. And I want to put emphasis on cumulative. Now, they are building a year to date. They aren't standalone quarters like a VAT return is. Instead, every quarter, we are adding 3 months worth of income and expenditure to our year to date, which then allows us to pull together that 5th and final update, being that final declaration or the final tax return. So that's why we can see here that each quarter, the dates start from the 6th. They'll go from the 6th of April to the 5th of July, then the 6th of April to the 5th of October, the 5th of Jan, and the 5th of April. So hopefully what you're seeing there is they are cumulative, they are all added together. And then come that final declaration, that's then where we can start making any of those adjustments that we might need to. Now, I can see Emma asked a great question. Will the payments of July and January still stand? And the answer to that is yes. So in regards to the payment side of things, so for your clients who, when they need to come and actually make that tax liability payment, that will stay the same. What you will find though, as we've spoken about here, is that it is just the frequency of reporting. So we're going to be sending regular updates to HMRC every quarter and then pulling together that final declaration, that final tax return with any additional income, expenditure, anything that we need to pull in, maybe some dividends from a limited company, that will come in at that final declaration point. And then of course we'll have that liability that needs to be paid. So then, as I've mentioned already, there are going to be 796,000 sole traders and landlords who are expected to be affected in wave 1, which equals a whopping 3.184 million updates per year, plus that annual final declaration for each. And that is a lot of submissions, okay? We're talking HMRC are going to receive a lot of submissions in their first year of MTD, and it's only going to increase. So there is no denying that this is going to require a little bit more investment from you, but with effective planning and preparation, we'll be sure to leave nothing to chance. So, how are we helping you with this? How are we helping our accounting and bookkeeping partners and sole traders and landlords who will be impacted by MTD for income tax? Well, this is where I want to briefly take you through our pricing plans and our business editions of Xero that we have available and make you all aware of Xero Simple. Now, if you do have clients who are using spreadsheets or they are still handwriting their transactions down in a red leather book, I really hope we don't have clients doing that, but I still had a client doing that when I left practice 6.5 years ago. So I'm sure they are still around, those types of clients. But what we do know is that they do need to be using an MTD compatible software, a HMRC recognized software. So we have specifically created a plan for sole traders and landlords called Xero Simple. Now, this plan offers everything your clients need for MTD for income tax and is designed to support your simple, non VAT registered clients. Now, Xero Simple includes data capture, bank feeds, and bank reconciliation, pay enabled invoicing, MTD for income tax filing, and much more. And this is readily available right now for our accounting and bookkeeping partners to take out on behalf of your clients. But it is also available as of today for those taxpayers who will be impacted by MTD for income tax. Now, I do just want to point out here, though, that if you have clients already using Xero, you don't need to change their business edition. You can leave them on the subscription plan that they are on, because our MTD for income tax filing functionality will be made available across all of our plans. The reason we've created the Xero Simple plan is to really create a bit of a stepping stone for clients of yours who aren't using cloud software, who need to in light of MTD for income tax. And as their business grows, so does the right plan for them. Now, as I said, we will be adding our MTD for income tax filing functionality to all of our current business plan to all of the UK business plan lineup. It isn't available right now. We are in beta testing, as with HMRC, and doing our own beta. So once it comes to mandation from April next year, this will be readily available across all of your clients' Xero subscription plans. Despite what they are on, it'll be readily available for them. Now, if you have any specific questions regarding those plans and which one is best suited for your client types, then definitely head over to our pricing plan page and you'll see there far more detail than what we're able to show here on this one slide. So definitely be sure to check out the pricing plans page if there are any specific questions, whether it will work for this type of client or not. Just remember that the simple plan is for non-VAT clients. So it isn't compatible with VAT, which we know that sole traders and landlords impacted by MTD for income tax, majority of them will be non-VAT registered. Now, speaking of those plans, and to really help us understand some of those subscription plans in a little bit more detail, I'd like to introduce you to a few clients of mine who need to comply with MTD for income tax. And the first client I want to introduce you to is Leo. Now, Leo runs a small construction business and they are not VAT registered. Not yet anyway. However, this is something that within the next 2 years we expect to change. Now, they do wish to scale their business by purchasing a rental property to help with their retirement, and they're also in talks with construction companies for some larger contracts in the summer, which may mean that they need to become a CIS contractor and get registered. Now, they currently earn over 50,000 per tax year, meaning they will need to comply with the new rules. Now, Leo is using spreadsheets at the moment. Absolutely loves his spreadsheets, and I have to admit, they have formulas, they are beautifully presented, but as we know, spreadsheets are far from ideal when it comes to MTD or making tax digital. So we already know that migrating and moving Leo from spreadsheets over to the cloud is going to be a challenge in itself already. It's a new way of working for both himself and maybe even for us as well. So that's why I would recommend for clients like Leo, the Xero Simple plan is a really nice stepping stone to getting them on board with cloud software and a really nice introduction. But we know that Leo wants to scale his business and grow. So as his business grows, we can then, of course, upgrade his business plan to suit. When he becomes VAT registered, we'll need to upgrade to the Ignite plan, but by doing so, it's providing far more functionality to him and to his business. Now, Leo is very conscious of cost and where his time is spent as well. So I do worry that for Leo and for clients like Leo, they will see this new change as an admin burden, and that is something that might take them away from their everyday business. So it's one thing I want to mention here is that, you know, there will be a lot of taxpayers who will be impacted by MTD who are looking for an accountant or looking for a bookkeeper like yourselves to come in and alleviate some of those pressures, because it is something that they aren't familiar with and used to doing. And we're going to be looking at Leo and his business in a little bit more detail very shortly, but there are a couple of other clients that I want to introduce you to. The next client then I want to introduce you to is Harry. Now, as it states there, Harry is a pretty relaxed guy. You know, he's pretty chilled. Harry loves to have everything in order, and typically he provides me with his monthly bookkeeping. I then go and process those invoices and bills, and then we have a quick chat about how his business is performing. We run some reports together, and I know that Harry is interested on focusing on what he's good at, which is running his business. He's not keen at all on the admin side of things, which is where I've come in and supported him. Now, MTD for income tax is something that Harry is aware of and has heard us mention. However, we do need to spend some time educating Harry on what he can expect to change moving forward. And of course, the largest change being the 4 quarterly updates, which they'll need to approve, as well as that final declaration. Now, Harry currently isn't using Xero himself day to day, but to help us save time in data entry, reporting and filing updates, we will be using Xero. Because as we know, for Harry to be compliant, he must be using a compliant software. So that's why we've set Harry up on the Ignite plan, because his business is slightly more complex than Leo's, but it also enables us to provide deeper insights and better reporting, and Harry is VAT registered as well. And then the last client to introduce you to is Carla. Now, Carla is very much involved in the running of her business and takes pride in knowing how the business is performing. Now, she's told us countless times that her business is her baby, and I'm inclined to believe her. She's tech savvy, she's using data capture tools like HubDoc, and is even hopping in and reconciling the bank daily, which is taking away the work from me, but she truly is a dream to work with. Now, some of you might find that you don't necessarily work with clients like Carla because they are heavily involved in the bookkeeping side of the business. However, it might be something that, yes, Carla's already using digital software and is something that she wants to be involved with. It might be that you and Carla work together on those quarterly updates. It might be Carla gets all of that data into Xero. You then come in and post any relevant adjustments that need to be posted each quarter, and then do that filing of those quarterly updates with her. So there's lots of different models and ways of working with each type of client. But for clients like Carla, she's already well versed in the world of digital record keeping and using compliance software. So for us, I don't need to worry about putting Carla onto Xero or onto a cloud software. She's already using Xero and has done for many, many years. And it might be as well that the only thing we would like to do with Carla is just have a conversation about the frequency of reporting, and that there is an increased there is an increase in that, and how we will be working with Carla moving forward. Now, I could spend the rest of the session and probably the rest of the day talking to you all about the different nuances that you will face. But if you take one thing away from today's session, is that there's no need for multiple software solutions. You can capture data, you can send updates and complete the final declaration, all from within Xero. So, Amy, I can see your question there. If I submit the 4 quarterly updates using Xero, does the final 5th submission need to be completed using Xero? I plan to hand over to the accountant for the final one, or could they use their own tax software? And that's the beauty of our solution, is you are able to complete that 5th and final declaration straight from within Xero. So that might be something the accountant chooses to do. Or if the accountant wishes to use their own tax software, they are able to file that final declaration in a different software. So it might be in their accounts production software if they choose. So the option is there. But whether you're a sole trader, a landlord, or both, or you have clients, should I say, that are a landlord and a sole trader, then you can manage everything from one subscription. And a really quick tip as well, for those of you who are already using Xero, one thing to highlight here is that tracking categories will be your best friend, because tracking categories, as we know, will help us and allow us to analyze income and costs. So that is particularly useful for landlords who need to split transactions out by property, or perhaps self-employed businesses who have different cost centers. But the one thing I want you to know here is that if you do have clients that are both a self-employed business and have properties that need to be managed, you can do that from one subscription. Now, Les, I saw your comment earlier in the Q&A around our 3.184 million submissions is massively understated, and you are right. That 184 million subscriptions submissions is based off of each of those 796,000 sole traders and landlords impacted only having one self-employed business or 1 or 2 properties. Of course, you will have clients that have multiple self-employed businesses or multiple properties, both in the UK and foreign property. So some of your clients might have more than those 4 submissions, because it will be 4 submissions per self-employed business. But as we know, as a minimum, we have that 3.184 million submissions, which is huge. So yes, you are right there, Les. We did understate it, but it's hard to get an exact figure for that. So we just went for the easy option of doing the 796,000 times 4 to give us that figure. But yes, you are right. There will be far more that HMRC will be receiving. So let's now focus on then that end-to-end journey and just briefly sort of cover off what that will look like. I know many of you listening in today are already Xero users. You are already well versed in the world of Xero and how to use it. But there might be some of you who haven't really had much exposure to Xero and how to use our platform. So I just want to showcase to you really what a good end-to-end journey will look like, and what you will in turn be following when it comes to managing your clients through MTD for income tax. So we've looked at three of our client types. We've looked at Leo, Harry, and Carla, but I would just like to take a moment to explain what that journey looks like for those clients. And the first step in our journey is getting that data into Xero. I think that's the first step in any journey. And that, of course, is data capture. Now, HubDoc, as many of you know, is our free data capture tool, which is available on our web browser or on the mobile app, both iOS and Android. And it extracts key data from documents automatically and creates transactions in Xero. Now, we've already discussed that one of the main changes coming with MTD for income tax is keeping digital records. And this is ideal for you and your clients, as it will save you both time and data entry, and it can lend a helping hand to your clients when capturing out-of-pocket expenditure, especially those who don't have a business bank account set up. And that's another top tip. I would highly recommend, if your clients don't currently have a business bank account and they are going to be impacted by MTD for income tax, I'd suggest getting them to set one up, as it will make your lives much easier when it comes to that reconciliation and pulling together those updates. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are already using HubDoc, so I just wanted to recap why you should be using it. And if you haven't used it before, then definitely check it out. Because ultimately, that's going to tick us off with that first principle of change with keeping digital records. Secondly, sales invoices. We know that MTD for income tax, those quarterly updates are going to be focusing on income and expenditure. We've covered off expenditure. We're now focusing on income. So raising sales invoices and sending them out to customers is a key part of any business, and Xero makes it really easy for you to do so. You can even send them from a mobile device. So your clients can raise invoices whilst they're out and about, they're on the road, straight from their mobile app, which is then helping you as their bookkeeper stay on top of their revenue. And you're also able to set up payment services such as Stripe and Go Cardless, which can enable your client to get paid up to twice as fast. We then have bank reconciliation, and this has to be one of my favorite parts of any end-to-end workflow. And that is because it's a crucial part of preparing data for client conversations. Using tools like cash coding can make bank reconciliation a breeze and allow you to split transactions out to different tax rates and account codes if needed. Now, an extra step that you can take to really tick all of the boxes once the data has been inputted into Xero and the bank has been reconciled is to go ahead and run reports. Now, this will ensure that the data is accurate and up to date and in real time. So if anything looks out of the ordinary, we can go in, make adjustments using those manual journals. And of course, the last step in our end-to-end journey is preparing and filing those all-important 4 quarterly cumulative updates and the final declaration. But the final declaration, we've still got time, plenty of time until we need to look at focusing on doing that. But of course, before that, we have those updates, and that's where we're going to be taking a look at our solution and what we have planned and available for you. Now, as I know, that is exactly what you all want to see. You all want to see what our solution looks like. So we're just going to jump straight to it. We're going to jump in and take a look at our solution. Now, our product teams are working tirelessly in the background in ensuring that the product is ready. As I've mentioned, we are in beta at the moment, and I'll be talking a little bit more on that towards the end of the session. So I know that there have been a couple of questions in the chat and in the Q&A regarding the beta, so I'll talk a little bit more on that shortly. But let's jump straight over into our sneak peek of what our solution looks like. Now, our solution, as I've mentioned, will not be available in your client's Xero organizations until mandation. Unless you are part of our beta, then Once you have been accepted onto the beta, then that will be provided to the clients that you have listed and presented to us as the clients you wish to test. And I would highly recommend joining the beta. If you don't want to join our beta, then at least join HMRC's beta. It's something I did for VAT, and I had a number of clients of all different shapes and sizes in the beta for VAT, and I absolutely loved it. It was my way of testing and making sure that it was going to work for all of my client types. And I then felt like I had a say when HMRC asked for feedback. I was able to confidently give them my opinions and my advice on what and how it needs to work moving forward. So here is our sneak peek. Now we are going to start here in the income tax overview page, and our solution will be built into your client's Xero organizations. So you don't need to navigate elsewhere. Instead, it will be found from within the accounting dropdown upon mandation date. So it won't be there right now, but it will be in the future. So it's a really nice, easy way to go and navigate to that. Now, the income tax overview allows you to easily view and manage MTD obligations. You can clearly see what needs to be done and by when. And once MTD for income tax is mandated, then taxpayers will automatically be moved to the new penalty regime, which will mean that your clients will face a £200 penalty if they miss more than one quarterly filing deadline. So please remember that. But also please remember that only takes place once MTD for income tax is mandated, not during the beta testing over the next year. So it just means that come April next year, there will also be a new penalty regime. So just something to be mindful of there. And keeping on top of deadlines will therefore be critical, especially whilst you're still getting used to more frequent reporting. Now, the obligation statuses makes it really clear where things are up to and what we need to get done. Everyone loves a to-do list, I know I do, and I can clearly see that I have the first quarter's update to produce and send across. But this to-do list will allow me to focus on the most urgent and the highest priority tasks. You'll also find that we'll be pulling obligation data and the tax estimates directly from HMRC. So you're always seeing real-time data, helping you plan work and tax budgets for the year. And you can see, as I mentioned, that the first update is due. So we're able to head into the income and expenses to review our figures before sending them to HMRC. So let's go ahead and view the first update and see what information has been pulled through. Now, the transactions that you or your clients will be entering into Xero, so our sales invoices and our purchase bills, any transactions created as part of the day-to-day processes will automatically be mapped into the tax categories needed for MTD for income tax reporting, meaning that you're automatically compliant with MTD requirements for digital record keeping and digitally linking them to the quarterly updates. So this will ensure that you and your practice have healthy bookkeeping habits like keeping the bank reconciled and using automation tools such as HubDoc, which I know so many of you are already doing today. So already we've got several ticks under our belt for MTD for income tax. And by using those tools, there will then be minimal work when the time comes to send information to HMRC. So as you can see, we've got all of those tax categories here. Let's hop into car, van and travel expenses, and we can then see which report codes make up that tax category. So I have my hire and leasing of plant, equipment and vehicles, travel and subsistence, vehicle running costs. So they've all been pulled through. If you need to map any report codes to the tax categories, then you can do. If you're using a bespoke chart of accounts, Susanna, I can see your question coming through. If you are using a bespoke set of chart of accounts, once you've got them entered into Xero, you are then able to go through and do that mapping. But the great thing is that Xero will actually do a lot of that mapping for you. So if you notice, oh, actually, I've just added a new chart of account code into my client's organization that I need to pull through into this tax category, you can select manage report codes and be able to get that pulled through. We won't do that today, but you will be able to. You will be able to do that. So if there is anything missing that you're noticing from some of those tax categories, which should be in there, then you can go ahead and manage those. Let's select done then and get this sent to HMRC. I'm happy. The figures have been pulled through. They're shown in the right tax categories. It might be I've posted some journals already into Xero for maybe a home office allowance. Something that we can look at doing, maybe monthly or quarterly if we choose to. But everything's been pulled through that needs to at this point in time. So all I need to do is hit send to HMRC. This pop-up will appear here, just informing you that you're about to file and submit the quarterly update. And once received by HMRC, they will then perform a tax calculation, which will then be visible within our overview. We can select send update, and within a matter of seconds, that has now been shared and filed. And once that return has been submitted, we can see that it's been filed there, really nicely and clearly labelled. HMRC will then update that tax calculation or tax estimate based on the figures received, helping you and your clients to budget for the year ahead. Now, I personally think that by having that tax estimate, and I know I've already mentioned this, but I really think that it will help sole traders and landlords get a better handle on their finances, helping them to plan ahead and budget for that final declaration and, of course, that final tax bill that they'll need to pay. Now, the final sneak peek I wanted to give you and to take you through is how you can manage your clients' tax obligations with ease straight from within Xero HQ. Now, Xero HQ is only available to our Xero partners, so you must be a Xero partner to access Xero HQ, which I'm sure many of you listening in today are already Xero partners of ours. But if you're not, then you're absolutely welcome to do so. There's no obligation, there's no sign-up fee, nothing like that. By becoming a Xero partner, it gives you access to Xero HQ, to some of our practice tools, and to some of the really cool tools that we have within HQ that can really help supercharge and help you plan for MTD. So what we're going to do is head to Xero HQ, and one thing you will find is our tax manager. Now, Xero's tax manager helps partners manage clients' tax compliance obligations at scale. And currently, we're able to manage those obligations for company accounts and tax, personal tax, partnership tax, VAT, and soon, upon mandation for MTD for income tax, we'll be able to manage our clients' obligations for MTD for income tax. So this will help you and maybe any of your staff, if you have staff, ensure that all obligations are met for your clients when they are due. So that is our sneak peek. That is all we have time for today. I wish I had more to share with you, but sadly, that is all the product team could provide me. But we, of course, will have far more coming your way over the next coming months. So do be sure to keep your eyes and ears peeled. So I'm going to head back over into my slides, and we're now going to focus on what you can do to prepare. And I think that's really a big question on everyone's lips at the moment is, what can I do to prepare? What do I need to start doing if I haven't started doing anything yet? And to be honest, that question, what can I do to prepare, can actually be quite overwhelming and, daunting, especially at the prospect of change. And I've, already spoken about how during my time in practice, I explored and was part of the testing for MTD for VAT. But it didn't mean that when I was preparing for MTD for VAT that I felt prepared, because in the moment I felt very overwhelmed. I didn't know which clients were best to migrate over to Xero and cloud solutions first, and which of my clients would likely dig their heels in the sand and resist the change on how we handle additional workloads for clients. But one of my top tips is the first thing I would suggest you do is segment your client base. Some of you will have all of your clients who will be impacted by MTD for income tax. Others might only have a couple. But it's still worthwhile segmenting your client base, knowing who, when, and how many of your clients will be impacted is really powerful stuff when it comes to managing any legislative change, especially MTD. And once you've identified those clients, have a think about how they're currently set up. What is your relationship with them, and how are they currently doing their bookkeeping or self-assessments at the moment? Do you do their bookkeeping every month or every quarter, and then their accountant comes in and does the financial statements and that self-assessment tax return? Or is it something that you take all the way up to a final TB and then the accountant does the rest? What is your working relationship? Is it going to be something that you're going to be doing it for them? So doing it for your clients, doing it together with your clients, or is it something that your clients are going to be doing themselves? Hopefully they won't be doing it themselves, because they, of course, do need your expertise. So it's likely that it will be your clients will do it with you, or you will do it for them. And a couple of other things as well is, if you do have staff, are they upskilled? Do they know the changes that are coming with MTD for income tax? Are there any clients that you need to migrate over to Xero? Have you communicated with your clients yet? And have you reviewed your internal processes? So there's a few things there that if you haven't started any of them, do not worry, you're not in trouble. It isn't still, it's not too late to start. But what I would say is do start now. If you haven't done anything with MTD for income tax, do it now, because I can assure you the time you put in now, you will save in the future. And it will be less of a burden and less stresses and worries moving forward. Now, speaking of client segmentation, as I mentioned, this really is a key step. And you already know your clients best. You know your client base and how they're currently operating, which puts you in a really great starting point when looking at segmenting them. Now, a lot of them will already be using compliance software. Some of your clients will be VAT registered, who will be impacted by MTD for income tax. And if that's the case, then they're going to be requiring less from you as a bookkeeper, as they're in the habit of quarterly submissions and using software already. However, as we've already addressed, we know that there will be plenty of clients who are still using spreadsheets, or even the classic shoebox clients, bringing you a bag of receipts once per year. See, by starting now, you can really get ahead of the curve and be ready in time for April 2026. Now, think about, some of your quick win clients. Clients like Carla, who are a bit more tech savvy. They even have a bit of experience with their day-to-day bookkeeping. Opposed to a client like Leo, who is using spreadsheets and has done for the entirety of their business. They are going to have a lot more change coming their way. Now, we have lots of resources that you can look to use within your bookkeeping practice and to share with your clients, and I'll be sharing them at the end of the session. But another thing to think about, as some food for thought questions here, which I'm sharing with you all, is what can I do to prepare? How did your practice find MTD for VAT? For those of you who experienced MTD for VAT and were there during the build up to April 2019 and April 2022, are there any lessons that you've learned from VAT? Was there anything that maybe you wish you'd done sooner or maybe didn't really have much impact at all? How will you manage this change alongside your day job? It's not necessarily getting your clients to start bringing you their records every quarter and for you to start pulling together their income and expenditure every month. It isn't about that. What I would suggest you do now is communicate with your clients, tell them what's changing, explain to them that ultimately, the work that you're currently providing to them, you will have more work that needs to be done. So, will your fees be changing? Is it something that potentially you need to maybe go and visit them and have more time in their offices? Ultimately, it isn't about, getting your clients to start doing the work now. If you can, fantastic. And if I'm honest, that's best case scenario. But I do know that for a lot of clients, they won't want to do anything until they have to. I know that, you know that. That is something that we're all aware of. But what I will say is you are their advisor, you are their bookkeeper, you're there to support them. And by supporting them is by telling them what's changing, how you will be working with them moving forward, so that when it does come to April next year, they're not suddenly in a state of shock by how much they need to provide to you. Instead, we've slowly started to drip feed that information to them. So then, what's next when it comes to our solution? I know a lot of you have questions specifically around some of your clients and the types of clients that you have and you look after. And I know that our product teams are super busy at the moment in building out our product solution and making it even better than what we've gone through today. So I did just want to give you a taster for what's to come. So a lot of you will have clients who have jointly owned properties, maybe a husband and wife. You might have clients with multiple businesses. You might have some clients who decide to do it themselves, so do it yourself updates. And the other thing to mention, and I believe I've already briefly spoken about this when we had a question come through, is supporting agent capacity. So we will be supporting multiple agents where it might be that for yourselves as the bookkeeper, you might be in a full agent or a supporting agent capacity, which is a concept that HMRC have introduced so that a taxpayer can have different agents for the quarterly updates versus the final declaration. So if you are the bookkeeper pulling together those quarterly updates and then handing over to an accountant for that final declaration, we will be supporting agent capacity. So that is something that I think is a really key takeaway there, especially with how a lot of you will work with your clients and with their accountant. So what are some of your next steps then? We've only got a few minutes left, so I will whistle through these as quickly as I can. But the first next step really is just to familiarize yourself with reporting requirements and of course what has changed. If you are interested in joining HMRC's beta and or our beta, then please do register your interest. We have currently closed off the beta registrations only very briefly, only over the last couple of days, just whilst we start to release access to our beta. So if you do wish to join our beta, then you must be registered with HMRC's beta. That is something to note there. So if you do want to be a part of the beta, you need to register with HMRC, and then you can register with ourselves. If you're a Xero partner, then reach out to your account manager for more information on that. Start segmenting your client base if you haven't done so already. That is a really key one there. And of course, get ahead of the curve and, keep updated with the latest changes. Everyone is going to have unique experiences with MTD. There are lots of mixed opinions over MTD and making tax digital. That is something that I've learned over my years being on the other side and not being an advisor in practice. But hand on heart, I personally think that MTD is a good thing, is a positive. And I've seen those positives firsthand, not just for my clients, but even just for myself. You know, I used to spend 5 working days pulling together one VAT return for a client. MTD for VAT allowed me to then take that down to a day and a half each quarter. And within that day and a half, I spent 3 hours at my client's premises where I took them through their monthly management reports that I pulled together. And we spoke about their budgets for the next 6 months. So compared to 5 days just doing a VAT return, I was then able to shrink that down to a day and a half, but also give them far more insights into their business and build a far greater working relationship with them. So then we have a lot of support available for you right at the tips of your fingers. So I will be sharing some links with you in the chat box so you've got them, because of course we all know that having some resources can really help us. So in the chat box, you will see I am quickly firing through some resources for you. We have resources regarding our MTD tax guide, our MTD toolkit, which has a load of content in there. We have a link there to some more webinars of ours within our webinar journey for MTD. But please do make sure that you grab those links because they will disappear when the webinar closes. So do be sure to open up some of those. Fabulous then. So I do just want to say a massive thank you to everyone and a massive thank you to ICB for having me today. I will stop talking and hand over to Jasmine to wrap up the session. But any questions that we haven't got around to answering today, I will look to get back to those. So I'll work with you, Jasmine, on getting those sorted. But again, just a massive thank you for having me, and I really hope to see you all soon in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jess. I can see in the comments everyone saying how useful that's been. I think you've broken it down, very clearly. And just to reassure everyone, all of those links, we'll make sure you get a copy of those. Obviously, we're going to have people watching this on catch up, so we'll make sure you've got access to all the resources you need. And I think between the ICB team and the Xero team, we are here to help and support you. So thank you so much, Jess. And yes, to everyone attending, thank you. And we'll send out a recording later today. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks.